That's nasty.
Welcome back, everybody. It is your boy, Chuck Nasty, on Fantasy Football, Week 9 here. Today is Tuesday. You know what that means. We drop the streaming defenses video on Tuesdays. For those of you that are below 500, we got a couple weeks left before teams that make the playoffs are determined. So any little edge that you can have to help your team continue on, get an extra W, is huge, or even a couple extra points. So we're going to recap the picks that we did last week. We had the Steelers, the Colts, and the Detroit Lions. And then we're going to go into some picks for this week, as well as a couple of teams to not play based on matchups. So my top pick is, and always will be, whichever team plays against the Miami Dolphins. Last week, that was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And some of you asked in the comments prior, why we use the Vegas over-under line as an indicator of whether or not a team's going to score a bunch of points. Well, the predictive analytics that they use and the statisticians, they're wizards, okay? Nobody's going to be as good as they are. And if they are, for the most part, they're going to be the ones writing their own lines, So Vegas gave the Dolphins 14 points is what they said that they were going to score in a projection in the over-under, and you can kind of determine that. Well, they scored 14 points, so that's just something to keep an eye on. If you're trying to determine which games are going to be big, look at the Vegas over-under line, see where it's at, see what the line is, and then figure out what the implied point total is for the team that you want to play, and you'll have a better idea of whether or not a team's going to get scored on a ton. So everybody said that the Steelers were not going to be a great option, but 2 touchdowns against is fine. We're assuming they're going to get a couple of interceptions, at least a couple sacks as well. They did just that. They got 4 sacks. They got 2 interceptions, only allowed 14 points total. So that Vegas over-under and implied point total for the Dolphins was spot on, which is exactly why we use that. And, if they finished well. They had 13 points. Definitely more than happy with that. Anytime you get a defense that scores over 10, you're pretty happy with that. Even if they're not at 10, they're close to it there, you're pretty happy with that too. So the Colts was the second one that we had last week. I had a feeling the Colts were going to win that game. They marched all the way down the field with under 2 minutes left and a couple timeouts. It's like deja vu being a Denver Broncos fan this year because it has happened every single game, it feels like. Obviously, it's not every single game. The Bears did it. The Colts did it. The Jaguars did it. And the Broncos are leading going into the last couple of minutes. It's so hard to watch because you know what's going to happen. But anyways, the Colts, they did okay. They scored 7 points on defense. They had a couple of extra sacks in there. And they didn't really allow a ton of points. It was a low-scoring game, which is why they were a good D to play. So the third D that we had in here was the second performing defense on here was the Detroit Lions. They scored 11 points against the New York Giants. And, they had no interceptions. They had some sacks in there. And then the defensive touchdowns really what saved them because they did get, 26 points scored against them by the New York Giants. So had they not gotten that defensive touchdown, it wouldn't have been a great outing, but we had a feeling, based on the projections and the strength of the matchup that the Lions were going to be a good play this week, which is why we put them in there. So there's that. So I'm going to give you a couple for this week. If you guys have listened to me last week and watched the video last week, I told you to go pick up the New York Jets because most people in your league are not going to play them last week, but you're going to want to play them for the next 3 consecutive weeks because they play the Dolphins first. They play the Skins, and they play the Giants all in 3 consecutive weeks. So, they haven't been a great defense, and they're missing C.J. Mosley at this point. But any single time you play against the Miami Dolphins, you want to have that team on your roster. It is what it is. So we're using the Vegas over-under again. The implied point total for the Dolphins against the Jets is slightly higher than it was last week at 18 points. But the Jets are above average in sacks. Hopefully they get an interception, maybe a pick 6 for a touchdown. That would be huge. I think they're going to have a good week. We got a couple of other matchups that are under 50% owned that we're going to put in here. But they're not as good as the Jets against the Dolphins, okay? So just temper your expectations. The Panthers against the Tennessee Titans. So you saw what happened with Ryan Tannehill last week. He had a decent game, but because he's throwing more, there's more of an opportunity for him to throw interceptions, which gives us potential for the Panthers D to have a good week. But the Titans are also scoring points. They're scoring points on the ground, and they're basically pulling up chunks of yards with Derrick Henry. Tannehill's putting him in good position to score by throwing more. The Panthers are a good defense, though. So a good defense against a not-so-great offense, I'm going to lean on the side of the defense. And the Panthers D, more than anything, has been getting more sacks. So most leagues have a standard 1 point for each sack. And if they have a ton of sacks in this game, it could be a higher scoring game for them as a defense. So, I think that realistically they could score, between 8 and 12 points this week. It's not a great option. I'm just saying if you don't have a good option, that might be something to consider. Another option that is even less favorable than the Panthers against the Titans is going to be the Eagles against the Bears. And the primary reason for that is because Trubisky has not looked good. Okay. Vegas says that the Bears are only going to score 20 points or less. So maybe the Eagles can get a pick. Maybe they can get, a couple of sacks on defense. They're not a particularly strong team. So I'm not telling you to go out and start the Eagles over everybody. Keep that in mind. That's full disclosure to you. But it might be a decent option if you have a bad matchup this week. So other people that you should bench this week, maybe to pick up one of those streaming options I just mentioned, would be the Chargers against the Packers. I talked about it last week before the Chargers played the Bears. You don't want to be playing the Chargers defense. The team has not been playing well. The opposing teams are scoring on them, and the Packers are projected to score at least 24 points against the Chargers defense this week. So I believe that one is in LA, but it's not going to be pretty for the Chargers D. And if Aaron Rodgers gets going and he scores more than Vegas's projected 24-point total, I just don't see the Chargers D being able to stop them. So not somebody I want to play this week, throw him on the bench. And then the Bears against the Eagles. So we're using this Vegas line, and Vegas is saying that there's an implied point total for the Bears, or being scored against the Bears, of 24 points as well for the Eagles. So they're saying that the Eagles score at least 24 points against them. So 3.5 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns and a field goal. Like you don't want to go negative on defense. I'm trusting that Vegas has analysts that are strong enough, which obviously if you bet any sports, they are almost always spot on. You don't want to play them this week, so grab one of the other options. But for everybody else that's new to the channel, hopefully these defensive picks help you out a little bit. We're going to do the looking forward piece as well, which would be the Colts that you had picked up last week. If you picked them up like I told you to, next week they play the Dolphins. So stash them on the bench. Don't drop them this week while you're picking somebody up off of waivers. They are going to be a good play moving forward. So just keep that in mind. Any questions or comments, feel free to drop them down below. And as always, ring the bell, subscribe to the channel so that you are notified anytime I post a video. And we will see you on Thursday for the start sit for this week. Good luck.